The bright morning sunlight illuminated the magnificent gardens of the Ashbourne estate as luxury cars lined the entrance for one of the year's most anticipated weddings. Reporters crowded outside the gates, eager to witness the marriage of billionaire heiress Victoria Hawthorne. But behind the glamorous decorations and smiling guests was a secret no one understood. Furious at her grandfather's final will, Victoria had been ordered to marry a humble single father she had never met if she wanted to inherit the family company. As the ceremony began, she looked at the quietly dressed man standing beside her in a simple gray suit and felt only resentment. Without lowering her voice, she mocked him in front of the guests, calling him nothing more than a poor widower who would never belong in her family's world. The guests laughed politely, but the single father simply smiled with calm dignity. None of them knew that the man she had just humiliated secretly controlled the largest private investment empire on earth, and before the day ended, the truth would leave everyone speechless. If you believe kindness and second chances matter more than wealth or appearances, please like this video, share it with someone who believes true character is priceless, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Kindness Paradise for more emotional stories filled with hope and inspiration. The single father was named Julian Mercer. 5 years earlier, he had lost his beloved wife, Claire, after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise their 6-year-old daughter, Emma, alone. To the outside world, Julian appeared to live a quiet and ordinary life, driving an old pickup truck and wearing modest clothes. Very few people knew that after selling a revolutionary technology company years earlier, he had quietly built a global investment network through charitable trusts and private holdings. Choosing privacy over publicity, Julian dedicated most of his fortune to children's hospitals, schools, and disaster relief while raising Emma away from public attention. Victoria Hawthorne had spent her entire life surrounded by privilege. Intelligent and ambitious, she successfully managed Hawthorne Industries after her father's retirement. However, years of being admired for her wealth and status had slowly convinced her that success could be measured by titles, influence, and family reputation. When her late grandfather's will revealed that she must marry Julian Mercer to inherit controlling ownership of the company, she assumed the elderly lawyers had selected an unknown widower who desperately needed financial security. She never bothered to learn who he truly was. The ceremony ended beneath clear blue skies, but warmth never reached Victoria's heart. Throughout the reception, she introduced Julian only as, "the man my grandfather chose," never calling him her husband. Julian accepted every insult with remarkable patience, spending most of the afternoon helping Emma feel comfortable among strangers rather than defending himself. Several guests quietly judged him. Others pitied him. Only Emma seemed completely happy. Later that afternoon, while photographers gathered for family portraits, Emma accidentally tripped near a decorative fountain. Before anyone else reacted, Victoria instinctively rushed forward, catching the little girl before she fell into the water. Emma wrapped her tiny arms around Victoria and thanked her with an innocent smile that momentarily softened the tension between them. For the first time that day, Victoria saw something unexpected. Julian's eyes held no anger, only gratitude for protecting his daughter. That evening, after the guests departed, Victoria received an urgent phone call from Hawthorne Industries. The company had suddenly lost its largest international financing agreement. Without immediate support, thousands of employees could lose their jobs within weeks. The family fortune that Victoria had spent her entire life protecting stood on the edge of collapse. And the quiet single father she had humiliated earlier calmly looked at the financial reports, as though he had already seen them before. The next bright morning, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hawthorne Industries as panic spread throughout the executive offices. Senior managers rushed between conference rooms carrying financial reports, while television channels speculated that the company could collapse within days after losing its largest international funding agreement. Victoria Hawthorne had barely slept. The confidence she had always displayed was beginning to crumble beneath the weight of responsibility. Julian Mercer quietly entered the boardroom carrying only a notebook and a cup of coffee. He did not interrupt anyone or try to take control. Instead, he calmly listened while executives argued over impossible solutions. Some proposed selling company assets. Others suggested laying off thousands of employees. Every option seemed to protect profits at the expense of ordinary families. Julian finally spoke. His voice remained gentle. He asked a single question. If you save the company but destroy the lives of the people who built it, have you really saved anything? The room fell silent. Several executives rolled their eyes, assuming the quiet single father could never understand international finance. Victoria, still embarrassed by the forced marriage, politely thanked him but continued discussing the crisis with her advisors. An hour later, the chairman's assistant hurried into the room carrying unexpected news. Representatives from Mercer Global Capital, the world's largest privately owned investment group, had arrived without an appointment. Everyone stood. The firm's legendary founder had almost never appeared in public. No photographs existed. No interviews had ever been given. The mysterious billionaire behind Mercer Global remained one of the business world's greatest mysteries. The conference room doors slowly opened. Every executive froze. The representatives walked directly toward Julian. Without hesitation, they greeted him respectfully. "Good morning, Mr. Mercer." Complete silence filled the room. Victoria stared at her husband in disbelief. The chairman looked at Julian, then at the visitors, unable to speak. One of the representatives calmly placed several official documents on the table. He explained that Julian Mercer was the sole founder and majority owner of Mercer Global Capital, whose investments quietly supported thousands of companies across more than 40 countries. His estimated wealth exceeded that of every person in the room combined. Julian had simply chosen a private life after losing his wife, believing that raising Emma mattered far more than public recognition. Victoria felt her face grow pale. Every cruel word she had spoken during the wedding replayed inside her mind. She had mocked a man who possessed unimaginable wealth. Yet he had never once mentioned it. Julian looked around the room and gently pushed the documents aside. He explained that none of that mattered. He had not come to prove anyone wrong. He had come to save the people whose jobs depended on the company. He immediately offered Mercer Global's financial support under one condition. Not a single employee would lose their job because of the crisis. The board members could hardly believe what they were hearing. Julian was willing to risk billions. To protect complete strangers. Victoria quietly lowered her eyes. For the first time in years, she realized she had confused wealth with greatness. Julian possessed both. Yet it was his kindness, not his fortune, that made him extraordinary. Later that afternoon, Victoria found Emma sitting alone in the estate's garden, happily drawing pictures with colored pencils. The little girl smiled warmly and asked if Victoria wanted to help color the flowers. As they sat together beneath the warm afternoon sun, Victoria slowly began to understand something far more valuable than business success. She wasn't just getting to know a billionaire. She was beginning to know a father whose greatest treasure had never been his fortune. It had always been his heart. The warm morning sunlight poured through the glass walls of Hawthorne Industries as every employee gathered in the central atrium. Rumors about the company's future had spread throughout the building, and many workers feared this would be the day thousands of layoffs were announced. Some held their loved ones' photographs in their pockets, silently praying they would still have jobs by the end of the afternoon. Victoria Hawthorne stepped onto the stage beside Julian Mercer. For the first time since their wedding, she did not stand apart from him. She stood proudly at his side. With tears in her eyes, Victoria addressed the employees. She openly admitted that she had judged Julian by his simple clothes, his quiet lifestyle, and the fact that he was a single father. She confessed that she believed wealth created greatness, when in reality, greatness is revealed by humility, compassion, and sacrifice. The room became completely silent. Victoria turned toward Julian and apologized publicly for humiliating him on their wedding day. She admitted that although he had every reason to expose her arrogance, he had instead chosen to protect her company, her employees, and her family's legacy. Julian smiled gently. He accepted her apology without hesitation. He explained that forgiveness is always more valuable than revenge because forgiveness gives people the opportunity to become better than they were yesterday. The employees erupted into applause. Many wiped tears from their eyes. Julian then announced that Mercer Global Capital would fully stabilize Hawthorne Industries. Not one employee would lose their position. Instead of layoffs, the company would invest in new technology, staff development, and family support programs. Working parents would receive flexible schedules. Single mothers and single fathers would receive expanded childcare assistance. Scholarships would be created for employees' children. The cheers echoed throughout the building. Months passed. The company grew stronger than ever. But the greatest transformation happened inside Victoria. She no longer measured people by their appearance, status, or bank account. She spent time visiting employees on factory floors instead of remaining inside executive offices. She learned every worker had a story worth hearing. Meanwhile, Emma slowly became the bridge that healed the distance between Julian and Victoria. Weekend breakfasts turned into family traditions. Afternoons in the garden became moments of laughter. Victoria never tried to replace Emma's late mother. Instead, she simply chose to love the little girl with patience, honesty, and kindness. One beautiful spring afternoon, Julian took Victoria to the modest neighborhood where he had raised Emma after losing Claire. Standing beneath the blooming trees, he quietly admitted that despite owning more wealth than he could ever spend, the greatest dream of his life had never been another successful investment. It had always been giving Emma a family filled with love again. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She finally understood that her grandfather had never forced the marriage to punish her. He had arranged it because he recognized the goodness in Julian long before anyone else did. As the golden afternoon sunlight illuminated the old neighborhood park, Victoria gently took Julian's hand. This time, not because a will demanded it, but because her heart chose it freely. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes true love begins with respect, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Paradise for more emotional stories about family, forgiveness, and second chances. Special request. Comment, the richest heart is the kindest one. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the trees, Emma ran ahead laughing while Julian and Victoria walked beside one another. The world remembered Julian Mercer as one of the richest men alive. But Victoria knew a far greater truth. His greatest fortune had never been the billions he owned. It was the love he quietly gave away every single day.